to watch this here. And let's start with grammar. Stop talking about mashed potatoes. It's on my brain now. Page 49 in the grammar book this week. We're talking about verbs. I'm sure you've heard that word before. Verbs are action words. Later, you're going to learn that there's also linking verbs and helping verbs, but we're going to focus just on action verbs today. Okay, this is a new thing you're going to start marking now in your book for your homework. So verbs, sometimes they show action or they links the subject to another word or helps another verb. This week you will learn about action verbs. It shows action. It's pretty easy. There is a little test over here, but I don't really like that, so I'm just going to kind of skip that part. The best way to do this is to ask yourself, what are they doing? What's happening in the sentence? And that will tell you what the action is. And by the way, every verb has a subject. And the subject is whoever is doing the action. It could be a noun or a pronoun. But there's always a noun or a pronoun in the sentence, and that's also considered the subject of the sentence. So when you want to find the verb, you ask yourself, what are they doing? What's the action? That's how you find the verb. So you're going to start labeling these things S for subject and V for verb. So here it's telling us about a subject, okay? It's a noun or a pronoun that performs a verb action. It tells who or what the clause is about. To find the subject, ask who or what is doing the verb. Now there's a little extra information here. This is something I just want you to tuck away in your brain. You don't have to identify them as this, but just know that this is what they are. Only nouns and pronouns can function as subjects. That's important. When the subject is a pronoun, it will be one of the subjective case pronouns. These are the pronouns: I, you, he, she, it, we, they, who, or which. Now, who or which, you're going to learn that later. So don't worry about that if you're like, wait, what? Why is it who and which? Because that sounds like a who-which clause, which we're also going to talk about down here. I'm going to explain that to you, okay? So the way to find it in this book, first you're going to read the sentence and look for a word that shows the action. And then you ask who or what is doing that action. Write V above each verb and S above each subject. I got to turn off my heater. I was cold and now I'm not. Okay. So here's your example right here. The soldiers met at the castle. So we have met is the verb. That's what they're doing. And if you ask yourself who met at the castle, look back and you can see soldiers. That's the subject. So you're going to learn that subjects and verbs go together. Okay, you can't have a verb in a sentence without a subject. It won't sound right. There's always a verb. There's always an action that goes with the subject. Now down here, it's talking about the who-which clause. The good news about that is you've already started using that in your writing. You guys are already doing ly adverbs and who-which clauses. So you're pretty familiar with these, which is good. So a who-which clause contains a subject and a verb. So the subject, this is where it gets weird, but don't worry, it'll make sense as we go. The subject of most who-which clauses is who or which, but sometimes the subject is another word in the clause. Down here, we're going to look at a couple of examples, but basically you're going to find who or which, that's going to be the beginning of the clause, and look for the word that shows the action, who or what. Again, you're going to write V for verb and S for subject. Okay, these two examples at the bottom, let's look here. The first one says, the king had one daughter who wanted many things. So the who clause is who wanted many things. Notice they put parentheses around it. You're going to do that too. And you're going to label the subject and verb inside of that clause. And notice the subject is who. The reason is because the whole thing is referring back to the daughter. It's telling more about the daughter, right? So it's going to be the subject of this clause here. And then the verb inside the clause is wanted. Okay. Here, the subject changes a little bit. It says, her bag looked like the bag which the soldier owned. This uses which because it's talking about the bag, right? So now inside the clause, it's owned is the verb. And if you ask yourself who owned, it's the soldier that owned it, right? The bag looked like the bag which the soldier owned. So you have to just kind of pay attention to where the verb is and then look to see who or what. And sometimes it's the who is the subject in the sentence, but don't worry, we're going to practice this a bunch and you're going to get super familiar with it the more we practice this. Do you guys have any questions though before we turn the page? Go ahead, Peter.
If there isn't a who which clause, can there still be a subject and a verb?
Yes, good question. So those are called main clauses when you have just a regular sentence without a who or a which. It will always have a subject and a verb. Every sentence does. Sometimes the verb is not really an action. It's more like a word like was or were, things like that, which we're going to learn what those are later. But you're right. Every sentence, even if it doesn't have who or which, has a subject and a verb. Good question. Any other questions? No? Okay, let's look at the back of that a little bit more here. This is kind of interesting. And you know how I've always told you guys, English is really hard. And it is. It's one of the harder languages to learn. You guys know English really well because you've been speaking it since you were born, same as me. So, but if you compare it to other languages like Spanish even, or Chinese, or, you know, any other language, this is one of the more difficult ones because we have words like this that are the same exact word, but it's used differently depending on the sentence. So it says many words can be used as different parts of speech. However, a word can perform only one part of speech at a time. For example, light can be a noun, adjective, or a verb. The same word, light, L-I-G-H-T, can either be a noun or an adjective or a verb. It can only function as one of those in the sentence, but it could be used different ways like this. Here it says noun, the light hurt my eyes. So this is used as a noun. The light could be like a flashlight, right? Have you ever been camping with your family and your little brother? It always happens, or your little sister or somebody in the family thinks it's so funny to shine the flashlight in your eyes, right? They go, ha, 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 they just shine it right in your eyes. Has that ever happened to you guys before? It's happened to me. I have big brothers. They always thought it was so funny to just like, you know, shine it right in your eyes, and it hurts, right? Especially if it's dark outside, you're like, ah. The light, that's a noun. Here it's used as an adjective. The light rain was falling. Same exact word, guys. L-I-G-H-T, same word, different meaning. The light rain is telling about the rain, which is the noun is rain. And light is telling what kind of rain. So that makes it an adjective, right? The light rain was falling, like it's sprinkling outside. And here the last example says verb. The lamps light the room. So it's telling what the lamps are doing. That's an action. The lamps light the room tells an action. So now that is a verb. So, but notice it's only one way in each sentence, but it just depends on what the sentence is. This is why English is hard. Got so many things like that. That's not the only one, by the way. And we'll learn more as we go. Do you guys have any questions about this page at all? Okay, let's do the practice. Anybody feel like reading today? Okay, Peter. Thank you.
After a few minutes, she asked him about his unusual bag.
Nice. Okay, and that word unusual, Peter, do you know how to explain what that means? Unusual?
Like, not normal.
Good.
Like,
Did you want to say something else?
no.
Not normal or not common, maybe strange. Okay, go ahead and put a check mark there. Good. And then we've got one article, but we're still going to write these in just to help us remember what those are. There's only one, so go ahead and find it and go ahead and label it by yourself. Okay, then we've got two nouns. So JC, can you help us find those two nouns?
Unusual. Bag.
There you go. Bag is one.
And then minutes.
Yes, good. And the reason why minutes is a noun is because we have that article A here. Whenever you see an article, you know a noun is close. Okay, so a few minutes. Good. Let's see, Easton, how about the pronouns? There's two of them in here. Remember what those are?
After.
Not after. Remember, pronouns tell us they're take the place of a noun. So words like he and she and him and her and it, those types of words.
See.
She is one. Yep. And there's one more.
Him.
Good. Yes. And his kind of looks like it could be a pronoun, but it's not in this sentence. And I'll explain that in a minute. So go ahead and check off the two pronouns, she and him. And then Peter, what about the adjectives? So that's when you look at the nouns and you look for, is there something that tells which one or how many before the noun?
His.
Good. And that is an adjective because it's telling whose bag. You're right. His bag. But there's a couple more adjectives here.
Unusual.
Yes, because that's telling what kind of bag. It's an unusual bag.
And you.
Few. Good. That's telling how many minutes. Few minutes. So remember, adjectives tell what kind, how many, which one, those types of answers. Good. So, or whose even, like his bag. Back to JC. This is what I suggest for you guys. Skip prepositional phrases. We're going to come back to that one, okay? Always do that one last, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But JC, it says one subject verb pair. There's more than one verb here, but let's start with the verbs. Look for the action. Actually, there's only one verb. There's only one. So which one shows action?
Asked.
Yes, good. Now we know that because she asked him, she's doing something, right? So, and then JC, who is the subject that goes with asked? Who asked him?
She.
There you go. So this is the only time you mark something twice because we have PR for pronoun, but we also have S for subject. And that's the only time you have two labels on something. All the rest of the time is just one label on here. Good. So that is the subject pair, she asked. So put a check mark by that. Now we're going to come back to prepositional phrases. Now, the reason why we made that last, because it's still probably new to you guys, but notice how A has something on top of it, few has something, minutes has something, she asked him, about has nothing, his has adjective, unusual has adjective, bag has noun, and that word after does not have anything. That's because if you wait till the end, it's so much easier to find those prepositional phrases. So Peter, Do you see a prepositional phrase here that we can underline? It's going to start with one of those words that doesn't have a label.
About his unusual bag.
Yes, good. About his unusual bag. And it always stops on either a noun or a pronoun. So you're right, it stops on bag, which is the noun. About his unusual bag. And then JC, do you see the other prepositional phrase?
After a few minutes, she.
It's actually going to stop on minutes because that's the first noun. It stops on either a noun or a pronoun. It usually stops on the first one. So very good though. It starts with after. So after a few minutes is one phrase, and then about his unusual bag is another phrase. Awesome. You did it. See how much easier that is if you wait till the end? So you can skip prepositional phrases and come back to that. It'll help you on your homework. How about Easton? What word should I make capital here?
The first one.
First word after, good. And then Easton, what about the end mark? What should we put at the end?
A period.
Good, period. Awesome, okay, that's it. So your list is getting a little bit longer. It's gonna keep getting longer, but you guys, like I said, the more you practice this, the easier it's gonna be. If you get stuck on those prepositional phrases, go back to that page where you have that list, and that will help you too. Do you have any questions about the practice page today? Okay, good. Now let's get out your binders. And you guys have been working on King Midas. So get out from your front pocket all the stuff about King Midas. This week, you guys wrote the first paragraph of your story, or last week, I should say. But before, I am going to have you read your paragraph or part of your paragraph anyway. But before we get started on that, I want to talk to you a little bit about that story sequence chart. This is new to you guys. I don't think you've used this before. So a story sequence chart tells the order or the sequence of how a story goes. There's usually 3 parts, right? The first part is characters and setting. The second part is the problem. And then the third part is the solution, basically. So you got characters and then what the problem is and the solution. There's a little more about that, but that's the basic plot of a story or a book or a movie. Last time we talked about Kung Fu Panda. You guys remember talking about Kung Fu Panda with me? Well, another one of my classes, they said, Mrs. C, why are you talking about Kung Fu Panda? That's an old story. Let's talk about Mario, the Mario movie. Have you guys seen the Mario movie before? Yeah? No? I haven't either, JC, so don't feel bad. But maybe Easton and Peter can help us with this. Think about the Mario movie. Think about the characters. So who can tell me what are the characters in the story? Who's in the story? The Mario movie. But do you know, JC? Okay, go ahead and tell us who's in the story.
Mario, Peach, and Luigi.
Mario, Peach, and Luigi. Anybody else, you guys? Peter or Easton? Go ahead, Peter. Who else is in it?
Bowser.
Bowser. Anybody else, Easton? Remember the movie Mario? I heard there was the little mushroom toads, I think they're called. Are they called toads? Peter, do you remember?
No, but who is Bowser's little helper? Did they say his name?
Luigi?
No, Bowser's helper. It's like a ghost, something.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know his name, but I know what you're talking about. So those are basically the characters in the story. And then where are they? What is the setting of that story? Do you guys know where they are? JC, do you remember?
Mushroom Kingdom.
Okay, Mushroom Kingdom. What else, Peter?
Bowser was in a big lava lake.
Okay,
Like,
another kingdom maybe. So I think there's a couple of different kingdoms that they go through, right? So that's basically the characters and setting, but then there's a problem. In the movie, there's a problem. Easton, do you remember what the problem was? Oh, do you have
No, but Mario lived in Brooklyn, I think.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Who can tell me about the problem that happens? What is the character wanting or needing? What's happening in the middle of the story, Peter?
Bowser wants to have Princess Peach.
He wants to marry Princess Peach, yes. And he also, doesn't he want to like take over the world, like all the kingdoms? Go ahead, Peter.
He wanted the star.
He wanted the star? Okay. I thought the star stopped him though. I don't know the story, but I can't remember. But anyway, the problem was that Princess Peach, I don't think she wanted to marry Bowser. I mean, yeah, Bowser. She did not want to marry him, and she did not want him to be in control of all the kingdoms, right? So then that's the problem. And then the rest of the movie toward the end is how are they stopping Bowser? How did they stop Bowser from taking over and from marrying Princess Peach? You guys remember? Peter?
They stopped him by using the star.
Yeah. The star had magical powers, I guess. And I think that Princess Peach and her friends, they found the star and then they used the star against Bowser so that he was stopped, right? He couldn't marry her and he couldn't take over the kingdom. So that's the solution. Okay, so now that you have the basic order of how stories go, this is totally normal and typical for books and movies and stories. You have the characters, you have the problem, and then you have the solution. So now looking back on the story of King Midas, remember we started with, let's look at your story sequence chart. I want you to have your paragraph nearby too. But your story sequence chart, we did this last week. We talked about the characters and setting. Remember, that's how we usually start a story, talking about the characters and setting. We have King Midas and that he was greedy and rich. He had gold jewelry and he decorated his house with gold, but he was dissatisfied. He wanted more gold. And then comes the strange visitor and he grants him one wish. Okay, so can you guys see my page okay on here? Okay, good. I don't know why a notification just popped up, so I want to make sure you guys saw that. So we are answering the question, who's in the story? Well, so far we have King Midas and the strange visitor. And I know that the daughter is in the story, but she doesn't come in until later. So I don't want to mention her yet. And then where are they? They're at his house. I drew his house right here. He decorated his house. So I mentioned that. It didn't really tell me when the story takes place, so I'm not really going to worry about answering that one. But give me a thumbs up if you guys had a chance to write your paragraph this week. Did you write a paragraph about this part of the story? Good. Peter, did you have a question for me or just, oh, give me a thumbs up. Okay, good. So I do want to show you really quick before we move on the checklist here. Let's look at that now. Remember on the checklist, there's lots of things that it's telling you to do. You only wrote one paragraph though, so really we're going to focus right here under style. You had two words that you needed to underline, one ly adverb and one who or which in a clause, right? So let's look at your paragraph and look for your ly adverb. Give me a thumbs up if you find it in your paragraph that you wrote. Good, Peter. By the way, while you guys are looking for it, Peter, did you see my notes that I sent you? Okay, were you able to see the notes that I put on your actual paper too? Oh, good. Yay. Okay, I just want to check on that. Good. Okay, JC, I see your thumbs up. Easton, did you write your paragraph yet? Do you see an ly adverb? Good. So does anybody want to volunteer? Just read the sentence that has the ly adverb. Does anybody want to volunteer for that? Just that one sentence. Thank you, JC. Go ahead and read your sentence.
Even with all of these things, he was really dissatisfied and wanted more.
Good. Really dissatisfied. Good. I like it because dissatisfied is the verb. And you're saying he's really dissatisfied. And remember, the ly adverb modifies or adds to the verb, and you got it in the right spot. So really dissatisfied. That's good. Anybody else want to read their sentence with the ly adverb? No, that's okay. How about the who or which clause? Do you guys see that in your paper, in your paragraph? Did you remember to underline either who or which? Good, JC. I see Peter. Did you get it, Easton? Good. Does anybody want to read that sentence with the who or the which clause in it? No? Okay, Easton, let me hear your sentence with who or which.
A strange visitor who came granted him a wish.
Good. A strange visitor who came granted him a wish. Good job, Easton. So now this week, we're going to finish up this story. We're going to come back to this at the end of class. I'll just remind you about that at the end. But let's start working on the rest of your story sequence chart. You should have your story, the original one of King Midas, nearby right now, so that in case you need to look back on it, you can. So we already talked about characters and settings. So in the middle of a story, that's usually when these two things happen. Go ahead and put the word conflict / problem in that second box on the left here. On the left side, put conflict / problem. Most of the time, there's a problem in our stories. You know, the characters have a problem. And this is when you ask the question, what? So just put what in there with a question mark. That means you're focusing on what is the problem, what is the character needing, what is the character wanting, what are they thinking or feeling or doing or saying, all of those things, right? We're answering what here, what's happening, what's wrong, basically. So what is wrong? What is the problem in this story about King Midas? Do you guys know what problem he has in the story? You can look back if you need to. Peter, what is his problem?
When his daughter ran to hug him, his daughter turned to gold.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem. I agree, Peter. That's probably the biggest problem he has. He has a couple of other problems too. Poor guy. He's thinking he's going to do something great, and then it just turns really bad. So let's look at the last one that we did here for characters and setting. We talked about this strange visitor that came in, and he granted him one wish. So in order to make your story flow, we need to think about what happened after that. So now what I want you to do is think about, what was that wish? What did King Midas wish for? JC, how about you tell us, what did he wish for?
He wished for everything he could touch, it could turn to gold.
Yes, everything he touched turned to gold. Now I'm going to use that and say everything turned gold. But if you guys have a different way of putting it on yours, you can. Okay. I'm going to put everything turn or touch, and then gold. And I'm putting it in quotes because that's what he wished for. He said, everything I touch turned to gold. So remember, the rules are still the same for this. It's like a keyword outline where we're only focusing on 3 keywords and for each one, and you can have numbers and symbols and abbreviations. Those are all free, but we got to stick to the rule of just 3 words. So that is his wish. Everything he touched turned to gold. Then, Easton, you can look back at the story. I know his daughter turns into gold, but that's a little bit later in the story, right? So what is the first thing, Easton? What are the first things that he turns into gold? When he first gets
Bed.
his bed, that's one. What else?
Accidentally his food.
Yeah, accidentally his food. What else?
I forgot.
It's
Plants.
right here, it's right here in the second paragraph, if you want to look at it, right here where it says, everything he touched did become gold, and then it tells the things that he touched.
Table, a chair, the rug, even his bed.
Yes, and you already mentioned food, and then flowers, that also turned to gold. Okay, so, but the first part here, table, chair, rug, and bed, that's 4 words. I'm going to pick 3 of those things. I'm going to put table, chairs. By the way, this is just my opinion, but I think he probably liked that. He probably saw his table and he saw his chairs and he's like, ooh, I like that. It's so pretty. I can sit in my golden chair at my golden table. And he just loves gold so much. So I'm going to put a little happy face right here because I think he liked that. But then the rug turned to gold. Okay, that's kind of cool. I'm going to skip that one. I'm going to talk about his bed. So let's put bed here. And if you think about that, if your bed turned to gold, would it be comfortable? Nah. Gold is a metal and it's hard like a rock and it's cold. So he might have looked at it and thought, man, that's a pretty bed. But when it got to be like 10 o'clock at night and he's tired and he's ready to go to bed, I don't think he liked it at that point. I think he was thinking, man, what was I thinking? How am I going to sleep on this rock? So I'm going to put a straight face here. Like, I think he might think it was cool, but I don't think he really thought it was comfortable. So he might have been like, I imagine him standing there in his pajamas looking at it like, how am I going to sleep tonight? But that's so pretty though. So I don't know. And then later after that, you're right. It was the flowers and the food. So I'm going to mention here on the next line, the flowers. And JC, what did he say about the flowers when they turned to gold? What did he say about that? Or what was he thinking?
They lost their color and smell.
Yes, yes. So I'm going to put, I think it would be good to put color and then circle the word color and draw a slash through it, meaning no color, right? Except for gold. Usually flowers are like pink and yellow and orange and really pretty colors, right? Well, not when they're just gold. And I don't think he liked that. But the other thing that happened was his food. And then he couldn't eat, right? So let's put food. And then I'm going to put a sad face here. I don't think he liked that his food and the flowers turned to gold, because you imagine he's probably thinking, I'm going to go get an apple and have a little apple snack. And then as soon as he touches the apple, it's like gold. And it probably was cool. Like a golden apple would be kind of cool. But then he goes to take a bite and he probably would break his teeth, right? You can't bite gold. That would not be good. But then, Peter, the worst happened. It was okay about his table, chairs, bed, flowers, food. Then the worst happened. What was the worst, Peter?
His daughter.
His daughter. I'm going to put a heart because he called her his beloved daughter or beloved daughter. And I'm going to put gold statue. And then I'm going to put big eyes with a sad face and then tears. Because remember, he's like, oh no, not my daughter. If you have a different way of putting that on your outline, you can change it up a little bit just to help you remember what happened. So you're noticing, I'm sure, we're not looking at every sentence anymore. That's what we've been doing up until this point. We're looking more at what's these themes, this part of the story. We're looking at the conflict and the problem. And these are the notes that are leading into that problem. So that's the worst. Here's his problems. He kind of has a lot of problems, actually. His bed, the flowers, and then the food, and then his daughter. His daughter turns to gold. He's already missing her. He's like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? So look toward the bottom of that front page of the story on page 49. There's a word here that tells how he felt. We know he was upset and he felt horrible about it, but there's a word that starts with the letter R that explains how he felt. Peter?
He regretted it.
Yes, regretted. Who can tell us what that word regret means? Do you know what that means, JC? What is regret?
Like kind of like wish it would like never happen or something like that.
Yes, he wished it never would have happened. He wished he didn't do it, but he did, and now he feels bad, and he wishes he never would have done that. So I'm going to use that word. Oh, I forgot to actually fill in this part next. So hold on to that thought, though. We already talked about the problem. Now we're going to move into what's called climax/resolution. We're in the third box now. This is wrapping up the story toward the end here. And this is where we answer the question, how solved? So we know that he has a problem. He has many problems. And now we're going to move into how does he solve his problems? Okay. I also want you to draw a little picture on this box if you have room. It can be small if you need to make it small. But I want you to draw a mountain that has a pretty sharp peak on it like that. That's a mountain. And then I want you to draw a little guy right here on the top of the mountain. I don't know. For me, if I have a picture of something, it helps me remember it better because I'm visual like that. But so I want you to draw an arrow down this way and then an arrow down this way. On this side, I want you to put good. On this side, I want you to put bad. Okay. Climax. That's the word I'm talking to you about now. So the climax of the story is that peak. That's why I had you draw the mountain. He's at the top of the mountain. And so basically he can go this way and maybe the story will end good. It'll be a good ending or a happy ending, but he could go this way and the story have a bad ending, right? We don't really know. He's like teeter-tottering at the very top. We know that his daughter turned to gold and it's like, is his daughter going to come back and it be a good ending? Or is his daughter going to stay a statue forever? That would be a bad ending, right? So climax is that point of the story where you don't know how it's going to end. We know because we already read it. But when you read a story for the first time or a book or watch a movie for the first time, you don't really know how it's going to end up. Sometimes like in Kung Fu Panda, when Po is battling the bad guy, Kai Lung, I think his name is, and Kai Lung is like beating him up really bad, right? He's punching him and then he flies across the scene into like on the other side of the city. And then he's like really slow to get up and he's like, and he goes back over there and he gets punched again, or he gets hit again, or he gets thrown across again. And you think, oh my gosh, Poe is not going to make it, right? But then Poe remembers he has a gift. It's the wushu pinky hold. Remember that one? Wushu? Wushy? Wushy. Oh, my husband told me it's wushy. I've always said wushu. The wushy pinky hold. Remember? And he goes skadoosh with his pinky. And then everything goes boosh like that. And then Poe is the winner, right? He defeats the bad guy. I don't know why he didn't do that in the first place, but I guess he had to realize he had that power. So he had to go through getting beat up a little bit at first. But anyway, so that's climax. So you don't know, is Poe going to live? Is Poe going to die? How is this going to end up? We don't know. And then the resolution. You can see that word solution in there. That's the root word of resolution. And that's basically how it gets solved, right? How the problem gets solved. Okay, so you mentioned that word regret, and that is part of the process of solving the problem. I'm going to use this adverb right here. I'd like you to put the word extremely, because I think it was pretty extreme at that point. It says deeply, so you could use deeply instead. Extremely, and then I'm going to put regretted. He extremely regretted his decision of what he did, right? There's another R word that I want you to find. I'll give you a clue. It's at the very, 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 very bottom of page 49. There's another R word to tell what he did or how he felt. JC, what's the other R word?
Repented.
Repented. Do you guys know what repented means? Peter. Repent.
What was I gonna say?
Did you forget? That's okay. Repent means he realized it was a bad decision and he decided to never do it again, right? He's repenting. He's like, oh man, that wish I made for everything to turn to gold, that was not a good idea. And I'm never going to ask for that wish again. That's what repented means. Okay. So he's deciding, I'm never going to do that again. So let's put repented here. So he regretted, he wished he hadn't have done it. And then he repented and he said, you know what? I'm never going to do that one again. So this is how now the story's starting to change, right? Now we're heading into how is it going to be solved? So the next part, this is for Easton. The next part, somebody comes back. Who is it that comes back, Easton, into the story at that point?
His daughter.
Not yet. She's still a statue. Keep thinking, Easton. Who comes back? Because he feels bad for the king, right? He has mercy on the king. Look at the very last part of page 49, Easton. I'm going to make sure you find it there. Very last part down here.
The strange visitor.
There you go. The strange visitor. So let's put him back here. The strange visitor. He comes back. Now flip your story to the back side. How does the strange visitor feel? I'm looking at an M word up there that tells how the strange visitor felt.
Mercy.
Mercy. Good. Sorry. That's good, Easton. Is that what you were going to say, Peter? He had mercy. Do you guys know what mercy means? Maybe you know, but it's hard to explain. Yeah. Mercy is when you feel compassion for somebody, right? And you have mercy on them. So the strange visitor is realizing how terrible this king feels, right? And he's like, man, I want to help you. He's having mercy. He sees that the king needs help, and so he has compassion on him. So what does he tell the king to do? Because he wants to help fix this problem, right? So the strange visitor comes back. What does he tell the king to do to get rid of the golden touch? JC.
Wash his hands in like a lake or something.
Yes, it's actually a river, but you're right. Wash his hands in the river, right? So we're going to put here wash and then river and then gold. What happened to the gold when he put his hands in the river? It says that it did something, right? Remember, Peter, what happened as he put his hands in the water? What happened?
The gold flowed away.
Yes, I'm going to do like a squiggly line like this and then an arrow, meaning it came out. He put his hands in the water and the gold power came out of his hands, right? It went away. And then everything came back to normal. The wish or the magical power that he had was gone. So I'm going to put that word normal. And what things became normal after that? What started becoming normal? Look toward the back here. It says the golden touch was gone. Look at this very last paragraph. This is how everything's now getting resolved, right? The problem is getting solved now. His golden touch is gone. It says everything was normal again. His daughter, that was the big one, was running and laughing. His food was hot and tasty. And he was so happy that things were back to normal. So I'm going to put heart, daughter, and food, and a happy face to remind me everything was back to normal and he could eat his food again. But there's still one more thing that happens at the end that was really important for us to put on our sequence chart here. So I do want you to add a number 4 underneath here, because this is kind of like the whole point of the story at the end, right? So King Midas is a changed man. He's a totally different person than he was in the beginning. So what are some words to describe how King Midas ended up at the end of the story? You can look at it if you need to back here. At the very, very end, the last couple of sentences, it talks about how he was different. How was he different at the end?
He was grateful.
Good. He was grateful. What else, JC? Grateful.
He saw the beauty in everything.
Saw the beauty in everything. Good, good. There was one more word I'm looking for that starts with a G. He was grateful. And there's something else with a G that tells about him. Peter?
He was generous.
Generous. So do you guys know what generous means? Go ahead, Peter.
Like giving and like something like that.
Yes, giving. He probably, because he's rich, right? He has money, he has nice things. He probably still has some gold things because he had gold things in the beginning. So maybe he gave those things away. Maybe it's the opposite of greedy, because greedy, you want to keep everything to yourself. Don't share anything. You want more and more and more and more and more, but don't share it. That's greedy. But he was completely changed by the end of the story. And then he was generous, meaning he gave away stuff and money and time and whatever else. He was generous. He cared about his people, and he was also loved by all his people. So I think at the end here, it would be important to mention that King Midas was grateful and generous. I know it's a lot of words to squeeze in. Try to squeeze it in if you can. And then I'm going to put a heart. over here because it says that he was loved by all his people. So King Midas, we're counting that as one word because it's a proper noun. It's his name. King Midas was grateful and generous and loved by all his people. I think it would be really important to make sure to include that because it's kind of the coolest part of the story, right? He's a totally changed man. So it's worth talking about in your story. Okay, so let me recap a little bit because this was a totally different method of taking these notes, and you guys helped me build this. But we didn't look at each sentence anymore. We looked at these things right here, the characters and setting, the conflict and the problem, and then the climax and the resolution. So thinking about those things, that's how we filled out this outline. A little bit different than what you're used to. And we'll be practicing this more again, but this is the order of a typical story, usually made up stories like fiction, fantasy type stories. So now your homework is to write paragraph 2 and paragraph 3. You're going to finish the story now about King Midas. Remember that each one of these, the Roman numeral, that's the first sentence. You're going to write a sentence using everything, touch, and gold. That was his wish, right? So you're going to make that into a complete sentence. And then the next one here, that's the next sentence. Table, chairs, bed. The next sentence will say something about the flowers lost their color and food didn't taste good anymore. And then his beloved daughter turned into a gold statue and he was sad about that. So you're going to use each of these for a sentence. And then the third paragraph starts here. So you're going to indent and start a new paragraph, use these words in the first sentence, and then so on. Okay, each one of these is a sentence. Now that's the main part. And then this is really important though, the checklist, right? This is where these are the things I'm looking for in your paragraphs. You're going to have your ly adverb and a who, which clause in each paragraph. Okay. And when you're done with your paragraphs at the very, very, very last sentence, that final sentence way down here, when you're talking about how he was at the end, you're going to pick, look at your checklist shows right here, title centered and repeats 1 to 3 key words from final sentence. That's important for you to pick a new title for your story. When you're done writing it, look at that very, very last sentence and come up with a new title using 1 to 3 of those keywords. You can pick which ones. You get creative with that. And then if you don't have the words you want in your title, you can add those words to your last sentence. Make sure it connects the title and the last sentence, okay? But you're going to change it. I don't want you to just call it King Midas anymore. It's going to be something different. You can keep King Midas in there and add something else to the title or completely change it, but it has to be different. Do you guys have any questions about what you're going to do this week? No? Okay, good. So you're going to write 2 and 3, paragraphs 2 and 3, and then your grammar are those 3 pages in grammar. So we're just a tiny bit early today. So good job, you guys. If you don't have any questions for me, oh, you're waving, Easton? Then you guys are free to go. I'll see you next week. Have a good week, you guys. I'll see you next week. Bye.